Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Off Script with Pastor Jared, here today with my good friend, Pastor Jim Collier. How you doing, sir?
Man, I am good. My voice is a little shot. I've been preaching in a revival for a few days, but I'm good.
Tell us what you're doing in our neck of the woods. What are you doing over? Because we had the pleasure of seeing you a couple months ago, and we got to have you preach here on a Sunday night. So what brings you back to town?
Yeah, so my good friend Stan May, who's the pastor at Emmanuel Baptist Church in Olive Branch, he and his staff each year pray over who they'd like to invite for their revival services. They do a spring revival, and so they invited me this year.
Nice.
So I've been there since Sunday. The Lord's been really, really good to us. We haven't seen anybody confess Christ yet, but there's been a lot of people at the altar, and I'm preaching through Romans chapter 8 step by step, which has been lots and lots of fun. Maybe we can talk about that sometime if you want.
That's great. So there are still churches that do revivals.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's funny because of all the churches that probably need revivals, Emmanuel might not. I mean, it seems like those that really are switched on and are obedient to the Lord. And I mean, obviously no church is perfect, but those that are really seeking after and pressing in, they still do evangelism regularly in their neighborhoods, and so it's a little different, but it's great. Worship is incredible. That's why my voice is shot. It's not from preaching; it's from singing really loud. So we're all good.
Those late '90s, early 2000s bangers.
Yeah, that's right.
So and we've been able to keep a really good relationship with Stan and Iva through Chronological, who, since I've been here, they've been able to come back and keep that ministry going. And man, they've been growing with the release of their new Bible. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I really, really appreciate their friendship and the connections we have with them and Kirby and other folks. Yeah.
Well, cool, man. So I have you here. I want to talk a little bit about just your life biography, things that maybe your average person doesn't know, some preaching stuff, some ministry stuff, some leadership stuff, and then maybe some food stuff at the end.
All right, yeah, man, I love food, bro.
I always have to. So start off with just give us kind of the run-up of your life, your childhood, and then into your testimony, like your salvation story. I don't know how many folks have ever heard that or not. I can't remember it, so I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, cool. So I was super blessed. My parents both know the Lord and knew the Lord. I was born into a Christian home. They really, really attempted to model Christ to our family, my brother and me. There's just two of us, Jeff and me. Both of us are in the ministry. And
what's he doing?
He for a long time was a youth pastor. Then he was a bivocational pastor. His main calling, though, is he teaches Bible and leadership at a Christian school, community Christian school in Tallahassee, Florida.
All right.
Yeah. So he's a Seminole, sorry, but he not sorry for him, but sorry for you. But you're not a Gator though. You're a
you're
a Vol. That's right. So I guess it really doesn't matter. You don't have a dog in the fight.
Only because of that 1999 championship or 98-99 where we saw each other a couple times.
Right.
We rarely see each other.
Yeah, that's right. So I don't really want to talk about college football. It's a mess right now.
Yeah.
But so anyway, I grew up in a Christian home. Trusted Christ really, really early. I think I was 5 or 6. And it was just because Dad and Mom, it wasn't just we went to church. I mean, when I would wake up in the morning, I'd see their Bible open on the table. They prayed with us at night. We did devotionals together. They modeled the gospel. They talked about the gospel. They loved Jesus, and so it was evident. And it was almost like that was just. It was just one long, continuous transition to be saved.
Yeah.
Now, I do know, obviously I was a sinner. I needed to repent of my sins and trust Christ. But I always knew I was a sinner because Dad kept spanking me. and I always knew that I needed Jesus. And so at the right time, I trusted Christ, followed in believer's baptism, struggled like every kid in the 80s. I saw one of my friends posted on Facebook the other day, Generation X raised on hose water and neglect. And so that was me. I wasn't neglected, but I was left to my own devices a little bit. That was in the transition between everything was safe and nothing safe. life.
Yeah.
And so we probably explored more than I should have.
But that's back when you guys got outside and you rode bikes.
We
Kids
rode bikes.
today don't get any of that.
No, we didn't. Yeah, we rode bikes. Thank goodness we didn't have cell phones, or I would have gotten probably in more trouble than I did. And so just really struggled on who I was. And sometime in my high school years, I realized that if I was going to follow Jesus, I had to follow Jesus. I mean, I couldn't just say it. And so I got serious about really trying to have a quiet time, read the Bible, trust Christ in my day-to-day life. Even though I wasn't making huge decisions at that time, as a teenager, I was still, the things I did, I tried to engage. I tried to witness. And I wasn't always a good witness. I struggled with that, but and then he called me to preach. I guess when I was 18, thought I would just go on through college. I was at the University of South Florida. Thought I would go on through. By the way, my first year I went to Cumberland College in Kentucky. It's now the University of the Cumberlands. It was a Kentucky Baptist school.
Is that right?
That was as liberal as the day is long.
Really?
First person I ever heard tell me that they didn't believe that Adam and Eve were real people was the religion professor at a Baptist school.
I had that same experience at Florida Southern College in Lakeland, and loosely Methodist. I went there for the business degree, but in my first, they require at least a religion class. So I'm in this New Testament class, and they say, Matthew, Mark, John, anonymous Jewish authors that lived in the 200s. I'm like, whoa, what is that? I've never heard that before.
Man,
that was the first time.
If that were the truth, if those were the truth, I'd be like, what's the point, man?
Yeah,
I mean, why even follow Jesus?
Why have this whole institution? Who
that's right.
built this thing?
Yeah. And so, but the Lord used that in my life to shock me back into complete followership of Jesus.
Me too. Same exact experience.
I mean, I was wandering around in the, I could easily have lived for the world at that moment in my life, and being caught in that onslaught, I had to make a decision. Mm-hmm. And my decision was, Jesus is real. He's alive. He rose again from the dead, and he's my only hope. And if he's my only hope, he should be my only allegiance. And it really cemented who I was.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that was like age 18, 19.
Yeah. So it was 88, 89. Then I went back to USF because I just couldn't take that kind of teaching. I was surrounded by it.
So you moved from Kentucky back to Florida?
Back to Florida, yeah.
Okay.
And I really never moved. I mean, I stayed in the dorm up there.
Yeah.
So it was, my life was still in Florida.
Everything could fit in a car.
Yeah, that's right. Everything could fit in a Toyota Celica. So everything could fit.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Blast from the past.
I know. That's right.
I haven't heard about that car in a while.
Oh, man. So anyway, moved back to Florida and then surrendered to preach. Very quickly surrendered to preach publicly. Thought I was going to finish the University of South Florida and then go right into seminary. But a guy named Saddam Hussein decided he wanted Kuwait more than the Kuwaitis did. He invaded. My dad was in Vietnam through no choice of his. I mean, like Uncle Sam called him and he went. My granddaddy was in World War II. Again, Uncle Sam called him and he went. And since Uncle Sam wasn't calling in the late 80s, I figured I just needed to give him my number. And I waited. Hopefully my parents won't listen to this, but I waited until they went on a ski trip to Colorado. And I dropped out of college and enlisted.
Wow.
And I know. And so thankfully I didn't immediately ship off. So it gave them a week or two to be mad at me before I went Fort Benning.
So you enlisted in the Desert Storm era.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wow. Now how did you finish that? You said you dropped out of college.
Yeah.
Obviously you finished in your 4 years. So how did that happen?
Yeah. It's just a God thing. I joined the Army. Worked up through the ranks. I was a staff sergeant working for a Christian guy. He was a new captain who was getting ready to go be a company commander somewhere. We worked together, the two of us, and he said, Jim, you need to go and go to OCS. You need to go to OCS. At that time, OCS, all it required was 60 hours, and you could go on into become an officer, 60 hours of college. And then after that, by the time you get considered for major, you had to have your degree. And so I went in with that thought in mind. But then while I was in OCS, Congress changed the requirement to where if you're an officer, you had to have a degree. And so I was finishing OCS with no degree. And when I came out of OCS, my branch manager, who's a guy that's assigned to you, kind of watch over you and make sure you make the right decisions in your life. You know,
guidance counselor. For
military. Kind of guidance counselor for lieutenants. So he called me and said, since you don't need to learn how to tie your shoes or shine your boots, do you want to go on to college while you're a second lieutenant? And I said, yes, sir, I do. Thank you very much.
Wow.
And so the Army paid me second lieutenant pay for me to go to college. I finished it in a year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What college was it?
Yeah. So it was Columbus State University. We called it UCLA, University Columbus, alongside the airport there in Columbus, Georgia. And I
love jokes like that.
Yeah. So we were still at Fort Benning. And the cool thing about that process, they call it degree completion. The cool thing about degree completion is the Army and the school make an arrangement. And that is the school guarantees that I'll graduate in set number of semesters if I take the classes they tell me to and pass.
Okay.
And so there was no last minute.
Fifth year, senior.
Yeah,
you got to take it in spring.
Yeah, that's right. So it was an agreement, and it was really cool. 3 semesters I finished, and which was a January semester, a summer semester, and then the fall semester, and then I went on to the 101st Airborne.
So your degree says it's from that Columbus
State University.
Even though you went to 2 other places before
that's right.
that. Wow. Okay. So tell us a little bit about your military career, because there's always been a shrouded in mystery around the halls of Kirby Woods at what your role was, what you did. Just Jim was slicing people's heads off of, and
Yeah, no, none of that happened. I did what every other peacetime warrior does, and that is train for war and pray for peace. And so I was pretty good at what I did. The Lord put me with good people. I was never the best, the strongest, the fastest, the smartest, none of those things, but I was always around the best, the strongest, the fastest, the smartest. And so that really allowed me to excel in those things. I was always in the infantry all the way through. Most people today, because I'm a pastor, will say, oh, were you a chaplain? But I'll just tell you, I don't know what the experience is now, but when I was in the Army, it was easier to be a Christian witness as a non-chaplain than it was as a chaplain. Chaplains have to be so politically correct.
I think that's still true. I knew a few chaplains in San Antonio. They're in the Air Force, which you may say it doesn't count, but because I know how you guys. They were kind of telling me how they have to balance so much between the different religions. There's even atheist chaplains now. There's all sorts of red tape, and how you have to do things. So, I get that. So, what was your actual title when you left?
When I left the Army?
Yeah.
So I was a captain. That was my rank. My title was the Assistant Deputy G3 Training for the 101st Airborne Division.
Okay.
Which means that I supervised the privates who made the PowerPoints for the general.
Okay. So airborne. So for people that don't understand military like myself, so you were in the Army.
Yes.
And that was the division, or that was that was the branch. The branch. Thank you.
That's
right. And within that, there's obviously you're working with planes. You said airborne.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there are planes in the Army. That's not just the Air Force.
Right. That's right. Well, if the people in the black suits come and arrest me when I say this, it's because I shouldn't have told you. But I don't know that I don't know that I can or can't tell this. I don't remember, and so I plead the fifth. Mm-hmm. But the shortly after, right at 9/11, the 101st and Fort Campbell, Kentucky, 101st Airborne has if they were a country, they'd have the 5th largest air force in the world.
Wow.
But it's all helicopters, or most of it, not all helicopters, but most of it's rotary wing, and they are their job. So if you ever saw We Were Soldiers once, or We Were Soldiers, or read the book or whatever, that is the formation. That's the beginning of the air mobile movement. What started as air mobile with the 11th whatever, I think they were 11th Infantry, 11th Armored Cav, or something like that. They became the 1st Cav, and they became air mobile. But the 101st a historically airborne division, jumping out of airplanes. They did gliders going into World War II. You ever seen Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah.
And they're walking through, and those gliders are crashed on the field, and
Yeah.
there's that Jeep with the general in it that's dead.
Yeah.
That's 101st. They glided Jeeps into. I mean, it was nuts. I mean,
Wow.
the ingenuity of war is pretty amazing.
Because when you talk about airborne stuff in the Army, I knew a few guys in San Antonio from my experience there, and they were all Air Force guys, and these were called PJs or parajumpers.
Right.
So I wasn't sure how different this was from that. What they're doing, because these guys were they would jump out of planes and go, collect damaged, be medics, but also fight if necessary.
Sure. Right. Those guys do a lot of snatch and grabs, search and rescue of downed pilots and such like that.
Yeah.
I did jump out of airplanes, but not with the 101st. 101st, when they stood up the Ranger battalions, this is a lot of history, but when they stood up the Ranger battalions in the late 70s, they took away a lot of the jump statuses, a lot of the airborne statuses from 101st. So for a long time, 101st jumped out of airplanes, just like you see on the movies. They parachute in and do that kind of thing. 101st transitioned to become an air assault unit. That's why they have so many helicopters. Their job is to fly the whole division in, seize key terrain, do stuff like that, so that armored units can follow on. And I mean, it's an integral piece in our warfighting capability, but they're different than almost anybody else. It's a unique situation.
So you've been in a lot of these. Have you ever been in a Black Hawk helicopter?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and I'm old enough to have been in a Huey UH-1. That's the old wop, 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 wop that you see on Vietnam movies.
Yeah.
So I've done all that.
Did CCR play when you were flying over?
In my head, man. So two songs always went through my head. One was CCR, and the other was Iron Maiden's "The Loneliness of a Long Distance Runner." So those were always in my head.
It's part of the scene.
That's right.
It's a part of it. So, so with the military service, one thing I've always wondered is how you thought that affected you as a person, the way you approach life, the way you approach discipline, the way you approach leadership. Because most of the people that I've known that have come out of the military have had a personality that it's been affected somehow.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You as a person are changed. How do you think that changed?
So I was in 12 years. It changed me in two significant ways. There are other ways that obviously I was a good fit. Like I felt comfortable in the military. You knew where you belonged. You knew who you could talk to. You knew what was expected of you. There was really nothing that you didn't know except, am I going to be able to accomplish what I'm supposed to accomplish? But everything else you knew. There was as pastors, we go into a church and we're like, okay, I'm not sure what this church's mission is. I'm not sure where we fit in God's kingdom. I'm not sure if my people are even like that. Mm-hmm. I know that never happened to you, but for me, that's kind of the way I experience it. And so in the Army, it wasn't like that. Everybody knew what the mission was. Everybody knew what was supposed to happen, and whether they wanted to do it or not is beside the point. They wanted. So that was a real comfort for me. The two ways it changed me was, first, I don't handle small problems well. Because I expect things to go the way they're supposed to go.
Right.
Right. So
a small problem is a sign of someone else's failure, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. Or just, we shouldn't have small problems. So let me give you for instance, and this is, I say this with as much humility as I can, because it's just messed up. This is me being messed up. It's not,
Okay.
But I have my weekly routine, or what I call a rhythm, is always the same. Like I do the same thing on Mondays. I do the same thing on Tuesdays. And it's just because it's the way I handle routine matters, life. And so if, for instance, I have a hospital visit in the middle of my Monday morning, or a funeral that's on Tuesday, and it changes, to me, I feel like I've lost the week. I know that's weird.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
And that's just a small. So that's what I mean by small things. Things that don't really matter.
So were you like that before the military? That routine regiment kind
I don't
of a person?
know. Probably. I think that's why I was so good in the Army. but I don't know that. I can't remember like that.
Yeah.
But now for sure I'm that way.
If you have a little that OCD tendency, it could really nurse that into
yeah. I used to tease about being OCD, right? That used to be just a running joke. Even here at Kirby when I was taught, I'm not OCD, I'm CDO because it's in the right order, stuff like that. But But as I've grown older and have some quirks that I'm really trying to deal with in my life, I realize that I probably am at some level have some anxiety issues that come from small things. And the other side of that is when it's big, I'm almost unflappable. Right. So if it's I can, and that's the Army too. I can handle chaos. I can handle high stress situations as long as there's an end to them. I can handle those things, make sound decisions, adjust off of that fairly quickly, and come to a good. And that's the military too. Nothing, no plan survives first contact, and so you have to learn how to adapt to whatever comes next. And so I was really trained well in that kind of thing.
Cool. Well, yeah, I think the military. Every person I've known that's been in, they have a distinctiveness to them. It's like you can tell. You almost can meet somebody and say, "Were you in the military?"
Yeah.
But you can do that for Baptist preachers too.
Oh, yeah.
Does everyone stop you in Kroger? Are you a Baptist preacher?
Yeah, that's right.
It's so true.
It's the way we stare at the beer in the bottom of the cart.
That's right. So how do you transition from that back into ministry? So it seems kind of like a little ellipsis in your journey. You feel a call to ministry when you're early on, 18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
You go in and you do 12 years in the Army, and yet we know somehow you got out and went back to ministry. So what was that transition?
Yeah. So early on when Myra and I were married, we married. I joined the Army in February of 91. I got married to Myra in May of 93. So I did about 2 years without her. The other 10, she was involved.
So you met her while you were in the military.
I went to a friend's wedding in North Carolina, and Myra was standing just inside the door of the church, and I thought, man, I don't know you, but I'm going to. I'm going to.
There's that military. It's going to happen.
Right. Yeah, it's going to happen. Well, I think she was a little bit more aggressive than I was. She asked me out that night. She's like,
right.
Hey, yeah, I know.
She was a liberated woman before.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it was Sadie Hawkins Day. It was February 29th, and so she had the freedom to do it.
There it is.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's a good story, though.
Yeah. Oh, it's a long story, but it's really fun. We have looking back on our lives together, you can just see the Lord's hand all the way through. Things that shouldn't have happened that God just orchestrated to make it
cool,
to make it work.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I remember you saying once that she married you not knowing you were going to be a preacher.
Yeah, that's right.
She married military Jim.
Yeah. So when she'll still tell you to this day, she said, I married a soldier. I didn't marry a preacher.
Yeah.
But we went, so early on, I guess maybe a year or two, we're still living in Germany. I remember walking into our little kitchen there, had a dining room table, or not, it's a kitchen table, and walked in there and said, I've been praying, I've been talking to the Lord, and I really think He's calling me in the ministry. And she burst out laughing. She was like, she said, you married the wrong woman. I'm not preacher wife material. And she grew up in a Baptist church. She was saved and baptized in the Baptist church. That one, I won't call its name, but because of what I'm about to say, but they were terrible on their preachers. I mean, they would call them in the middle of the night and harass them until they quit. It was just awful. And so she she felt so sorry for the pastors and their families that were there. She didn't want any part of it.
Right. So then apparently something changed by the time you get out, because she goes with you to the next stop.
So she is quick to say no, but she's also quick to get right with God. And so her first clutch is no. Not going to seminary. Nope, not going there. Nope, not doing that. But within a day, usually it's never gone longer than a day, she'll get alone with God and she'll know what's right. And she really is sensitive to His leadership, even if her first answer is no. Her favorite story growing up, not story, but truth about the Bible was Jonah. So I think she identifies with that rascal. So
what's the path to Mid-America? What's the path to your first ministry role?
Yeah. So how cool are you going to be if I drop names? You cool?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. go. So
this is off script, my man.
All right, good. Well, we're going to do it. So we went to, we thought we'd go right to Southeastern. So anyway, let me just tell you this. So the Army, I got promoted to captain. I went from being a lieutenant to a captain, and I had a choice at that moment. I never resigned. I had a choice to go on, continue my schooling, and become a company commander. So I would have gone back to Fort Benning, gone to the advanced course, and then gone and commanded a company somewhere. But if I declined to go to that school, it would start my clock ticking to get out. I had to serve so much more time. I had to serve a year as a captain. And so I did. I served a year as a captain, but I stayed at Fort Campbell instead of going on somewhere else. Stayed there. In the middle of all that was 9/11, which we thought that I wouldn't be able to get out after that, but the Lord just opened that door. The day I went in to withdraw my paperwork to take it back and say I'll go on and I'll stick this thing out, I walked in and the soldier said, "Hey, Captain Collier, your paperwork's on the desk. It's been signed." So I mean, and that was 4 days after 9/11. That was the Friday after the Tuesday of 9/11. So just clearly God arranging my life to move me from being a soldier to going to pastoring. So then I just assumed, Myra did not, I just assumed that we'd go to Southeastern. And so Southeastern, this is the days of Paige Patterson being the president there. We went in the summer to look, and we got there, and the guy that was taking us around was kind of being weird. He's like, "I just want you to know we have big classes here." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And he's like, "No, I mean really big. You may be one of 100. And I'm like,
"Are you trying to sell me?"
Yeah, I mean, who cares? Here I'm a soldier. I'm like, what do you think I've been doing for the last 12 years? Just show me what you got. But he just being weird. So we go through all that. And then at the end of the thing, he's like, "Well, the president's not here today, but he insists that every prospective student go through his office." I'm like, "Okay, that's cool."
Okay.
And so walk into President Patterson's office, and it is – so I've been in a lot of military generals' offices, colonels' offices, those kind of things, and I have never seen an I love me room like I saw in that place. I mean –
An ode to the self.
Oh, my gracious. I am telling you. And I would have told you this 10 years ago if anybody had asked this.
Before he had a little downturn in
popularity. Yeah, that's right. And so we're walking through here. The first thing that struck me was there was a huge dog bed for his two dogs. And the guy says, hey, he brings both of his dogs, and he called them by now. I can't even remember what their names are. And he brings both of his dogs every day to work, and they sleep right there. And I'm like, wait a second. Didn't you tell me that dogs weren't allowed on campus? And he's like, because we had a dog, and they're saying, you're going to have to get rid of your dog if you're going to come here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, didn't you say I couldn't have a dog? Yeah. Well, what about this?
Well, not for
yeah.
Rules for thee, not for me.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm just telling you that would never have flown in the Army. Yeah. I mean, no matter who you are, the general of the post wouldn't do that. You know what I'm saying?
So immediately you had
a man, red flags going all over the place. But then I started looking around, and there were, I bet there was. I don't know. I don't know how much taxidermy costs, but I bet there was $200,000 worth of taxidermy in that room.
Oh wow!
It was a giraffe from the bust.
Are you serious? Yeah. I was about to joke. I was about to crack a joke that what are we talking about? A giraffe?
Yeah. So from a giraffe from the shoulders up, a wildebeest jumping out of the wall, like and then various and sundry other things all in this office, and I was joking, just like you were about to joke. I was joking. I said, hey, well, when does he do this on mission trips? And the guy said, yeah, he takes a few extra days. And brother, wow. It wasn't a red flag. It was a screaming neon. No.
Was there someone under the bearskin rug with the with the head over top of their head, wearing it?
It was nuts, man. And so we're like, we walk out. And
he's in the stained glass over at
I think that was taken down.
I think they did.
They had to sell that for the espresso machine. But
too soon. That's good.
Well, I have no, like I said, my filter is long gone.
Yeah, that's good. That's all right. So Southeastern clearly
wasn't out.
Didn't work for you. Did you try anywhere else? Or?
Yeah. So I went back. I got the bright idea that probably passes through every young man's mind that has been called to the ministry. I don't need to go to school.
Yeah.
So that I went back, and with that in mind, I'm like, man, I know how to lead. I can do this. I've been in church all my life. Mm-hmm. And I went and talked to my pastor, and he's like, Jim, you're an idiot. He said, you need to go get sharpened. You need to know what you're talking about. And I'm so glad he was absolutely right. I didn't know what I was talking about. And so I went, I said, well, where do I told him the experience and all. He said, have you ever checked out Mid-America? And I said, checked out Mid-America? I've never even heard of Mid-America.
Right.
And he's like, well, it's down in Memphis. And he said, I really was going to go there. He went to New Orleans. He said, if New Orleans didn't work out for me, I was going to go there because of the academics and the requirement to share their faith and their focus on preaching and ministry, missions. And he knew of Dr. Gray. And so I went and checked it out. And from the moment I stepped on the campus, I knew it was the right place. I don't know if I know you remember one of these names. The only guy that was professor, it was summer. And see, the only professor on campus when I was there was Dr. Mahoney. Yep. And he immediately, during one of the, I walked in and sat in his class until a break. We walked out, and on break, he walked over, put his arms around Myra and me, and prayed for us. And nobody, by the way, except for praying over lunch, prayed for us at Southeastern. And so he prays for us, and he didn't pray that we would come there. He prayed that we'd know God's will. And it was just so nice. Duffy Guyton, do you remember Duffy?
Yep.
Yeah. So Duffy Guyton was the admissions guy, and he prayed for us. When I called back for some information on the phone, the young lady that I don't even know who her name, she prayed for us. I mean, everybody was just praying for us, and we just felt.
Yeah, it's a good culture.
Yeah. Oh man, we felt like we were home. And so I signed up. We came in October. I couldn't get out until October. My date of getting out of the Army was November the 5th. But I had enough leave time, vacation time built up that I could take what they call terminal leave, which means you just go on leave and never come back.
Right.
And so I went on terminal leave in September, but I wasn't early enough to start in the August class. And so I waited until October and started then. I was like, that was back when we were on 8-week terms. Mm-hmm. But it was awesome. We had a great time.
And you did your MDiv there, the first go around?
So MDiv, and then we got there in October. Dr. May, Stan May, who we've already talked about, me being over there with them this week. He was the interim pastor at Emmanuel Baptist Church, and they had been asking him to be the pastor, and he just kept saying, I can't do it. When I got there, he went to the personnel committee and said, we've got a guy who knows how to lead people. He didn't know anything about the ministry yet, but he knows how to lead people. If you'll call him as a part-time associate pastor, I'll be your permanent part-time pastor. And so we both came in together, kind of a two-headed pastor. I kept the staff in order, and I went and visited lots of the shut-ins and the older folks when he couldn't be, because he was still a professor at the time. And so, man, it was a great marriage.
So I like to do this. I did this with Tommy Vincent when I had him in a couple months ago. Walk me through each ministry stop you've been to and tell me one lesson, maybe the biggest lesson. If you have one or two or three, that's fine. But one lesson from each spot that you've been at. Like, at this place is where I learned this. At this place is where I learned this.
Right.
So, so every place that you've been on staff and up to today, the thing that you learned that took away for you, whether it be leadership or ministry or anything.
Right. So I think at Emmanuel, I learned how to pray, and I learned how to worship. That's what I learned mainly from Dr. May. The Army did a really, really good job of teaching me about leadership. So there wasn't a high learning curve on leadership, but there was a high learning curve on true worship and really praying for your people. And Dr. May and Steve Lindsay, was the old rocker lead of their garage band praise team or praise band there. He and I really learned to. I mean, I didn't teach him anything. I don't think. We just he worshiped and I worshiped, and we had a good time together. I got a little free there. I learned because of my military. And because of the house that I grew up in, I was a pretty strong fundamentalist in lots of ways, borderline legalist. In fact, if I ever wrote a book, I'd be like, Confessions of a Reformed Pharisee or something like that. It wasn't that I was Pharisaical. I knew that Jesus was my only hope. I knew that, but in the way that I walked in the Christian life. I really, it was rules.
Yeah.
And so it was there that I got a little bit loose. I mean, it's, as you know, it's an ongoing day by day struggle.
The pendulum swings sometimes too.
Yeah. We have a very tough time of holding things in tension.
Right.
And so, yeah, absolutely. But then I went to Oakhurst Baptist. So I was at Emmanuel as their associate from January of 2003 to about August of 2005, July 2005, sometime around there. In August of 2005, just another God thing. Jerry Phillips, who was a professor, a good friend of mine.
I had him. Yep.
Yeah, good. Mm-hmm. Professor at Mid-America. He was the interim pastor at Oakhurst. If you know Dr. Jerry, then you'll appreciate this little story. He calls me on one week and he says, "Hey Jim," he said, I need your help. He said, "I'm going to be preaching a revival at my home church this weekend." And he said, "And I've called 4 or 5 other people and they couldn't do it. Will you fill in for me?" and I said, "Yes, sir, I guess." And he said, "Well, I meant you're the first student I asked."
Yeah.
And so anyway, I went and almost immediately the Lord drew our hearts together. With that afternoon, a lady, I didn't know she was on the search committee, but she was. She came up to me and hugged my neck and said, "If you know Miss Ruby, you don't. Nobody here does, but I think she's 100 now, 101. I mean, she's still living." But she went, "Ooh," like that, and I didn't know what that meant. I thought, I either stepped on her toe when I hugged her, or
no, that means, son, you're in.
Yeah, that's right. And so the next day, I get a phone call from a guy, Gilroy, and he said, "Hey, you want to? We didn't get a chance to feed you, and your wife wasn't with you. Y'all want to come meet us at the Como Steakhouse in Como, Mississippi, and we'll just thank you." So I went and told Dr. Phillips what was happening. He's like, "Those 2 guys that you're going to meet are on the search committee." And so I had a little bit of a heads up. We went there, and the rest, as they say, is history. The Lord moved us down there.
So how would you characterize that ministry there?
Yeah. So that was me learning how to be a pastor. Really, the weight of pastoring, the weight of...
Because this was first senior pastor role.
First senior pastor. I was there for about 3 years. I loved the people. The people love us. We still go down there. We still welcome there. We have a great relationship there. It was a good first pastorate.
Did you have a staff there?
Somewhat, yeah.
Okay.
So,
because that's a learning curve too, how to handle a staff
right,
as well.
That's right. And so we had, I won't call lots of names, but we had a music minister that we brought who ended up being a little bit much, and then we had one of my great friends in ministry, Alan Birchfield. I brought him down. Jacob Harris, right? So yeah. I wanted Jacob down there with me as my youth pastor, but he was the youth pastor at Stan's Church, Emmanuel.
Okay.
And he said, "Jim, I can't come." And I said, "Well, do you know anybody like you?"
Yeah.
And
that's when a girl says, "I someone like you." It's like, I am like me.
Yeah, that's right. So Alan came, and it was a great relationship. Alan was just what we needed.
Cool.
Lots and lots of fun, and so yeah. So I guess my biggest takeaway from down there is the burden of the pastorate.
Yeah.
There was a family who lost a daughter in her early 20s. And she was in an automobile accident, and she had I can't remember, 3-month-old baby or something.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was there when the highway patrol told the parents, delivered the news, brought the purse, and so just the burden of the pastorate is what I learned there. What it's like to walk with people through dark times, difficult times.
Yeah.
And then the Lord called us to Kirby. That was in 2008. So I spent about 3 years at Emmanuel and about 3 years at Oakhurst, and then I came up here, and I learned lots here. I don't know that I've processed it all yet.
Right.
It's still in process. I think I can say this. If not, Isaac, you're going to have to take this out. But when I got here, Kirby was about 4 or 5 congregations melded together.
Yeah.
And they were melded together by Bob's preaching. Brother Bob was an extraordinary pulpiteer, is an extraordinary pulpiteer. And so there were 3 or 4 congregations. And what I mean by that is, a church would close down inside the loop, and lock, stock, and barrel, they'd come to Kirby.
Yes.
And so there was a great tension because most people in each of those groups only hung out with the people that were in those groups.
Yeah.
And so they thought...
I've heard that's how most churches actually grow in the Mid-South, is that story happening over and over again.
Yeah.
It's very rare to see a church grow from evangelism or just organic growth.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm not knocking any of it. It's the reality of it.
It happened. It happened, yeah.
And so what each of those groups thought was that everybody thinks like this. Why didn't Jim see it? Why didn't he understand that? Everybody I talk to wants it this way. This is my favorite anecdote about that. I remember clearly one day having 2 back-to-back. This was later on. I was toward the end of my tenure here. I had 2 people come in, 2 people that I respected, 2 people that I really wanted to hear from, came into my office one at a time, a half an hour apart. And the first one came in and said, Jim, if you would just go back to wearing a tie, and if you would put the choir robes back on, and we would go back to organ music, we would have revival.
Wow.
I know. Yeah. Well, and then immediately following that, I mean, the next person up on my docket who walked in, the next one said, Jim, you are transitioning us way too slow. You need to clear the stage, put a praise band up there, get rid of the organ, get rid of the choir robes. And they both thought that they spoke for the congregation.
Right. And when that's impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
These are not the same thing.
Exactly. and I mean, diametrically opposed. And this, I think this was probably the military coming out in me in a bad way. But the way I was trained to be a leader is you never let people see you struggle to make a decision. You make a decision, and then you lead from that decision so nobody sees the alternatives. Right. Because you don't want them to vacillate between those. You want to make a decision, and now you may seek counsel in those decisions, but you don't let them see you struggle, and you certainly don't turn them on each other. Right. So it did not occur to me. It never even crossed my mind that I should tell either one of those that there was a whole group other than them who saw it differently.
Right.
Because I didn't want to create animosity among the congregation.
Yeah.
I wanted to lead.
Or even to stand up in front of the church and say, there are 2 widely different opinions about what is going on.
And to be honest, if I was faced with that again, knowing what I know now, I probably would. And I probably would have called our church together to talk through it and pray through it and deal with it together. But at the moment, what I thought was, I need to lead this so nobody gets hurt.
Right. Yeah.
And so much of my ministry at Kirby was not leading, but holding people together. Kind of like being a sheepdog running around and around and around in circles.
The lasso man.
That's right.
Herding everybody into a big cluster. They don't come back.
Yeah, that's right. And as you know, leading Baptists is like herding cats. So, it was really, really, it wore me out.
Yeah.
It was so much. It wore on me so much that I almost left the ministry when I left Kirby. If if God would have let me, and by letting me, I mean if any school or anybody else would have called and said, Jim, we want you, I probably would have done it.
Right.
Because I was so beat up and I was so dejected, not over individuals, but over the situation that I couldn't figure out.
Yeah. Yeah, it was almost like the whole time you were working with a Rubik's Cube, trying to figure out like how to go forward with this thing. Like in some ways, the shadow of the church that was Bob Pittman's church and the way that it was done is kind of looming.
Yeah.
But then you have all these people saying, hey, it's time to go. And I remember, at the time there was a lot of people leaving, going to quote hip churches, quote modern churches, and kind of bleeding out there. And it's like, hey, do something. But you're just caught in this like, well, which half of the church do we want to lose?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the other thing is you never, or at least so one of my secret sins is pride, and not pride like I want everybody to look at me and celebrate me, not like that, but I want my name not to be associated with the guy that destroyed Kirby Woods.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I already gave you one of my, if I wrote a memoir, it'd be the Confessions of a Reformed Pharisee. If I wrote a real self-help book, I would entitle it Nothing Fails Like Success. and that's really what happens. Yeah. Organizations can grow so fast, and if they grow without purpose, they can get to the point where they're just failing. And that's where I felt like we were. I felt like, because we had grown and because we were, there was, I felt like my main duty. So let me say it differently. Like the steward that was given only one cent or one talent.
Yeah.
And he said, Lord, I knew what kind of a man you were, or how exacting you would be. And so I went and hit it and I didn't lose any of it.
Right.
That was kind of the spirit that drove me in all those years. I didn't want to lose anything.
Yeah.
And it just froze me in my tracks. Mm-hmm. And it was super difficult. In fact, I'm still embarrassed, and I know I shouldn't be. I mean, I know I'm free in Christ. I know I got it. And most people that are here at Kirby have extended the right hand of fellowship, given me hugs, loved me, all that stuff. So, it's not that. It's still. But looking back, I'm thinking, man, I'm so embarrassed. Yeah,
I know what you mean. And it's hard not to feel that way, even though you know you shouldn't. And everybody here loves you. And there are countless stories, myself included, that when I think of Kirby, I don't know. I didn't come from the Bob Pittman era.
Right.
I came from the Jim Collier era.
Yeah.
And I was here from 2011 to 2015. The vision that I have brought today was formed somewhat in those times.
Yeah.
There's a similarity to the vision, now. And I don't know if you've been following, how close you've been following. We do have new vision statement and values and all these things now.
Right. And a green K.
That's right.
which makes us flinch in our area in Cabarrus County, North Carolina, because I'm the pastor of First Baptist Concord, and the chief rival is Kannapolis. And Kannapolis, their logo is a green K.
No.
And so when I see it, I'm like,
I'm sorry.
No, that's cool.
But the heart that Kirby Woods has today, it comes from my time being there during those years and seeing all the good things that was going on. I know it's hard to look back and people I think knew, at least I did being on staff, that there was a lot of conflicting things going on, that you were like a divided man, trying to, but at the same time there was so much good, and that there was so much good at the time that happened, and for me especially, I mean, having been there, I learned everything about ministry through the lens of what Kirby Woods was doing. Yeah. Met Abby at Kirby Woods. Yeah. You married us, counseled us, and married us, and I get to preach from the spot where I got married, which is pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, that is awesome.
And then sent out a church plants there, and so it was for me and a lot of people still, even though there was all that going on, an awesome experience, and so. Anyway, I don't want you to feel bad.
No. And I get it. I mean, I get it. And nobody wants me to feel bad. Like I don't think there's anybody who has ill will toward me.
Not ones that are here now.
Yeah. I don't think that exists. It was just a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a lot.
At the same time, though, I look back at it and I think, who could have done what you're describing?
Yeah.
It almost seems like it's an impossible situation in retrospect. I mean, maybe, but man, I'm thankful I get to lead Kirby now, and because what you had to navigate that change. It was also just a change in the macro sense of church in general.
Oh, yeah, we were right. Like,
the church scene was changing at the time.
That's right.
Moving out of the traditional, with the music minister and the waving hand and the choir and the orchestra, moving away from that to the band, like in a few years.
Yeah.
And it was like every pastor was trying to figure out those waters.
Right, that's right.
And how to do that.
Yeah.
So those are a lot of lessons at Kirby. So you went to
First Baptist Concord,
where Myra has some
roots.
That's her roots at her home.
Now, not the church, but the area.
The area.
Yeah.
So give me a little rundown of where you're at now and what God has done in you through that, a lesson or a takeaway there.
Right. Well, very similarly to Kirby, when I got there, they had just experienced their second. I hate to say split because that's such a cliche word, but that's in essence that's what it was. Their second split in about 20 years. So at one time in this century, they were they were blowing and going. They had a significant momentum for the kingdom, and they were doing some good things. But those two just really ate away at what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
But when I got there, so the way that I won't go long into this, but they were doing Experiencing God leading up to trying to hear God's voice for who the next pastor would be. They were super desperate. They not desperate in a bad way, but desperate for God to move. Mm-hmm. And they did not know. I mean, they were staring death as a church in the face, and that church had been around since the 1800s. I mean, it is the First Baptist Church in Concord.
Wow. Yeah.
And so it was, in fact, it has existed as long as the town has almost. I mean, the same. And so they were desperate. When I got there, I was hurting. I was skinned up, and the Lord just took a pastor who wanted to preach and love his people, and married it up with people who needed the word and needed to be loved. Yeah. And it's the most, I don't mean this as a neglect to any other church that I've served, but it is the most genuinely loving group of people that I've ever been around because they stared death in the face.
Right.
And so all they had was one another.
Yeah.
And since then, so I think there were 135 regular attenders when I got there. I can't remember the day I got voted in. I don't remember how many were in there, but it was the first time that anybody could remember a unanimous vote in the church.
Yeah, that's sweet.
And so that you could see the joy on the committee's face because they were like, "Oh wow, whew, man, give this thing a year and we're out of here." And it's not our fault anymore. Yeah. But and some of those people that were on that, all of them are some of my best friends at church. So for Easter, not that numbers matter, but just to show you what God's done in 7 years, Easter Sunday we had 381.
Hey,
so,
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's Easter, but it's 7 years later, and we've baptized a lot of adults, we've baptized a lot of kids, we've been a safe harbor in the middle of all this United Methodist stuff. We've had a lot of conservative, Bible believing, Christ loving Methodists come over and take shelter in our
Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah.
If you believe, come on.
Yeah, and I've baptized most of them.
That's great.
But in fact, I've never done this before. I was fencing the table. I always fence the table, but we were fencing the table on Maundy Thursday for the Lord's Supper, and I always fence it the same way. This is for believers only, and in my belief and the way that I do it. Now, it's up to them. I don't force it. I don't police it, but I just say, if you've never confessed Jesus Christ publicly through the waters of baptism, I would ask you not to partake. Mm-hmm. And so I hit that just like I always do on that night. And I bowed to pray the prayer of examination. And when I bowed, either the Holy Spirit or my own conscience said, you just excluded some of your friends that have been with us for a year, and you just told them they can't take the Lord's Supper on Monday, Thursday because they haven't been baptized. And I know that they're planning on it. They just haven't done it, and they've walked with the Lord for years and years and years and years. And I mean, all that went just in a flash through my head. And so before I prayed, I was like, if I just offended you, please don't. You are allowed. I want to give you freedom. I do not want to steal your joy.
There's the Reformed Pharisee.
Yes, right.
Coming back.
I do not want to steal your joy. Now, I still believe, but I also believe that there's always grace. Sure. I still believe there's always an exception, and so I extended it. And that's just the way things. Yeah. That's the way I guess the Lord's changing. It's a different culture. In the Army, we used to say we're a long, long way from the flagpole, which means that the headquarters is a long way away. Yeah. Well, I'm a long, long way from Mid-America, long, long way from Memphis. Yeah. Almost like, not that North Carolina is a desert completely, but I felt like in some ways that I'm out in the desert and I'm a voice crying in the wilderness, and it's just freeing. I mean, you just some things just don't matter when people's lives and souls are at stake.
Yeah, that's good. So that's where you are today.
Yeah, that's where I am today.
Loving it and doing well.
Yeah, having fun.
You do have a glow about you these days.
And I'm not pregnant, so yeah. Can I say that on? Can I say that on this?
Hey, all right, it's said on the news.
So. Oh yeah, okay. I grew up in a culture where if you couldn't use that word in polite company.
Yeah, so. I Love Lucy. They slept in separate beds.
I know. And all of a sudden, little Ricky was just there. He's like, oh hey,
that's right.
How'd he get here?
So, I just have some kind of doesn't have to be rapid fire questions, but just some questions that are topical, and I want to see kind of where you're at on different things. So, top preaching influences.
Easily Stan May.
Okay. So not a famous guy, but a guy you served with.
No. I don't have much confidence in famous guys.
I'll tell you this: the older I get, the less I listen to the big boys. Big Eva, if you will.
So those guys, not to knock them. There are some really good Bible preachers who are proclaiming the Word of God, but most of those guys who are big got there because they have a special talent or an exceptional platform that they've used to get there, and you and I just can't mimic it. We can't go off that, and so. I would rather find the local guy who's being faithful and just pay attention to him. I would say that my two greatest preaching influence. Now I read all the books. I mean, I've got a PhD in preaching. I didn't mean to sound like that. I've got a PhD in preaching.
It forced you to read all the books.
Yeah, it forced. That's what I was getting to. It forced me to read all the books, and I still keep current and all that stuff. Two things. One, nobody's saying anything different than they've ever said. I mean, if you either preach the word or you don't.
Right.
So you could always go back to Timothy and Paul and get the same thing that these guys are saying. And I keep an ear to the culture to see what they need. One of the biggest. This is. You'll get it. Most other people won't and won't even care about it. But I have gone from the classical Stephen Olford, Adrian Rogers, 3 heads, 9 tails outline. Now I still preach that way. I still in my notes, but I don't give it to the people. All I give is the 3, if it's 3 or 4 or whatever, that lead to the final point, and that's all they see now. Mm-hmm. Because I don't want them to bog down in all the minutia. I want them to hear the main thrust.
I think that's why I am that way as well.
Yeah. And so that's the biggest change recently. So Stan May and then Jerry Phillips. Dr. Phillips taught me the way to organize my thoughts, and I still use all those. The biggest difference, so books, John Stott's Between Two Worlds, and then these are all old, by the way, but Brian Chappell's Christ-Centered Preaching, and I think those are the ones that are the biggest influence. Of course, I've read lots and lots, but those are the ones that I really love and that have probably influenced me more than anything else.
Yeah. So this is, I guess, I want to ask this because you mentioned the PhD. What led you to go back for that? Because I could see you just saying, I know what I need to know. Let's just keep going. But what made you want to go back and then take the extra step of actually teaching a class at Mid-America.
Right. So I love to teach. I probably love to teach more than I love to preach, even though I love to preach.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I really love to teach, and I love learning. So school is my natural habitat. It's structured like the military. I can read lots.
Maybe you'll be a seminary president one day.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know too many seminaries that need a president right now. But so as I pursued all that stuff. And this goes back to still being in Clarksdale. When I was in Clarksdale, I was surrounded, my church, so lots and lots of African-American small Baptist churches dotted all over the Mississippi Delta. And lots of those pastors were bivocational. Lots of those pastors hadn't had the opportunity to train. They hadn't had the opportunity to drop everything and go to seminary. Now, this is back before the advent of online, where you could do lots of stuff online. And I just felt then that the Lord had equipped me to go get a degree and then be able to come back, not to charge anything, but just to hold Saturday class and teach them what I could. That was the original thing. When I got up here, it was just easy to do because it was close by, and I love teaching. My only regret with that is I ended up majoring in practical theology, and I did it because I got scared. And that's a big regret. Dr. Skinner wanted me to follow him in Old Testament and Hebrew, and I wanted to follow him in Old Testament and Hebrew. When I got into the very first graduate research and writing class, and I was surrounded by who were going to be my peers and colleagues in the program, all the smart guys were in the Old Testament and Hebrew, and they loved to breathe dust of old cultures in libraries. And that's just not me. If you know me, I mean, I am not the guy that would rather spend time in the library with nobody else rather than being around a bunch of people. So I opted for probably an easier out, do something that I could do. I think it made me a better preacher. Don't hear me wrong. I think it helped me. But if I could go back and do it all over again, I'd probably do something different.
So in another world, what's your PhD in?
Old Testament theology, probably.
Okay.
Old Testament. My favorite thing to do, especially with a bunch of Baptists who have never been taught this way, I love to take the Old Testament and point to Jesus. Just show them how in every step, the whole point of the Old Testament is to usher in the Messiah.
Yep.
And so that's my passion. That's why I like teaching. I like to watch people who've never heard things. The light
bulb.
Yeah. I love that.
Good. So let's. This is kind of maybe a fun question. I don't know. You have to feel free here to open up. Can you think of a few examples of theological or practical positions that you have held that have changed over the last decade? Or since seminary, I'll say the last decade's recent, but since seminary,
Well,
what's your biggest changes to your either theology or practice?
My biggest change, well, let me tell you, going into seminary, probably the biggest thing that seminary had an impact on me was I grew up in a church that turned their head and spit when they talked about lordship salvation. And so, so when I got to Mid-America and heard Dr. Gray said you need to make Jesus Lord, I had a crisis of am I in the right spot for only about 30 seconds. One of my fellow staff members at Emmanuel, her name's Rebecca. Rebecca was she sat down. She'd been in seminary for a couple years already, and she sat down with me and she just talked me through what he meant by it and all that stuff. And once I got over the clutch, obviously you've heard me preach. It's repent of your sins and trust Jesus.
Right.
And so that was probably the biggest change then. The biggest change recently has probably been in my view of all the Bible together, kind of what I was talking about with the Old Testament. But when I began to grasp that, I don't know if I should whisper this. This may kill any chance of me ever being a seminary president. All right,
don't worry.
But I am no longer a pre-trib, premillennial viewer of Scripture and eschatology.
You can't say you're pre-everything like Dr. Shackelford.
No, I am not pre-everything. Well, it depends on how you define everything, because I might be pre-everything, but I have just moved. I am I am a hair's breadth away from being amillennial.
Yeah.
I am,
which would put you at a classical premillennialist today.
Yeah, that's probably what I am, classical premillennialist without all the answers.
Yeah.
Right? So I believe that Jesus can come back anytime.
Sure.
But I believe that when Jesus comes back, he's not going to come back to just get a few people and leave.
Yeah.
I think when he comes back, he's coming back. I think we're going to get snatched up. We're going to turn around and ride back in with him all in one breath. And he's going to put to rest everything and start usher in either the millennium, depending on how you define that,
or the eternal state,
or the new heavens and new earth.
Yeah.
That's where I am. And that is so different than when I came into seminary.
Yeah. So you no longer teach a rapture in the sense that believers are taken and then a 7-year period begins on earth without them.
Not at all.
Yeah. So
let me tell you this: I do hold for the possibility of that. Right. So if that happened, I wouldn't be surprised. I just don't think the Bible asserts it like a lot of people on earth assert it.
So do you think what led you there was that, like you alluded to, that view of Scripture in a sense that was
holistic?
Yes.
Yeah. So it all goes together. Mm-hmm. I believe. Let me tell you where I started. It has to do with the concept of who Israel is.
Yeah,
and that's everything. Because so I am pro-Israel. The state, the nation state over there, I am pro that political organization.
But for different reasons.
I agree with their right to exist. I believe for their right to protect themselves. I believe all of that. I'm good with them. I've been there several times. I love the Jewish people. It's not anything like that. It's just that I believe when Paul says in Romans chapter 9 and 10 and 11, when he's talking about, I wish I could give my own life for my countrymen. I wish I could be accursed so that they would know Christ. But then he says God fulfilled his promises. And when he shows the proof for fulfilling his promises, he didn't talk about a tribulation period sometime in the future. He pointed to himself as being from an Israelite who had been saved.
Right. And he has said, if I'm not mistaken, in Galatians, he called the church the Israel of God.
Yeah. Well, there are some, they would hedge on that. He does talk about the Israel of God.
And that's an interesting thing to say, like the people of faith at any given time are the people of God.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I believe.
They were Israel because they were the people of faith. But at some point when Christ came and went, they stopped being the people of faith unless they were the ones that converted.
Right, that's right.
The ones that converted still are.
If you look at all the apostles were Jewish. Right. They're all Jewish.
Yeah.
It's the extension and the news. It's the extension of what God started with Abram. In fact, in Romans and in Galatians, he says that those who are of faith are the children of Abraham, and those who aren't.
Yeah.
So I think it's easy. A lot of people don't, because that's been their background. They've never thought about it deeply. I think it's really easy. I think that when Jesus walked up past the temple in John chapter 15 and says, "I'm the true vine," that word "true" is there on purpose, right? I don't think he means. I think he's contrasting himself with Israel. The nation state of Israel.
Your connection to me is what's going to get you there.
Yes, that's right. And I think he saw the vine over the temple and said, "Hey, I'm the true vine."
Right.
And I just think all of...
And then there's a barren fig tree not too much later.
Yeah. I think it all goes together. I think it's so clear to me that what Jesus... So I don't believe in two peoples of God.
Sure.
I think almost that's blasphemy.
Now, you know what there's a word that people throw around called replacement theology.
Yeah.
And that's such a derivative or such a derogatory term. And I'm like, why is that a cut?
Right. I don't believe in replacement. I believe in it's the extended people of God.
Sure.
I think what God started with
that's
Abram.
Good. Can I use that?
Sure, man. Take it.
That's good. I'm going to use that.
I think what God started with Abram continues to this day through Jesus. I think that on that side of the advent of Christ, the first advent of Christ, I think on that side they were looking in hopes of the Messiah that was going to come and rescue. Look, all you have to do is read the Old Testament and you know that there were people in Israel who died and went to hell.
Yeah.
In fact, there were some people who didn't die and went to hell. What's his name? Korah and his rebellious family. The ground opened up and took them straight to Sheol.
Yeah.
So it has never been just being of the blood of Abram or Abraham that got you in.
Sure.
It was always by faith. And so I think it's I'm not as discontinuous from the Old Testament, the New Testament, as a lot of people are.
So this has changed for you.
Radically.
Since I don't know.
And what's really even changed is, and now I'm free to talk about it. I'm like, I don't care who knows it.
That's right. I would say, I mean, what you described sounds exactly like where I'm at. I would even say, talk about the hair, the thin hair between amillennial and
historic pre. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm right there on that line. And most days I feel amillennial, but I could you snap your fingers and I could go the other way, and I'd be like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Well, I'm absolutely. There is a millennium. The Bible talks about it.
Yeah.
Now it just depends on how you define it.
Of course, yeah.
If it's and I flip back and forth on how to define the millennium.
Yeah.
And so that's when that vacillating on each side of that line.
Now here I'll throw you one more on this theme, then we'll move on. If you had to pick of the two remaining views, so not the hairs between classic and amillennial, but if I said, which one are you closer to, post-mill or the original dispensational theology? Do you have any, if I said you got to pick one of those other two, would there be...
If I had to go in one of those directions, I'd go post-mill.
Okay.
Because
so you have turned on dispensationalism.
I think dispensationalism is a flawed reading of Scripture. Okay. I believe that, in fact, when I rotate around on that, now I'm not saying that anybody who believes it is bad.
Yeah.
Right. So I've got lots and lots and lots of brothers. I've read progressive dispensationalism. They're moving back. But if you take the original 1700s, 1800s dispensationalism, it is tantamount to heresy. I mean, it's just flat wrong.
And it's relatively new in church history, right? I mean, was it Darby that kind of coined that?
Right.
So anyway, that's enough to get everybody in trouble. But but no,
Isaac, man, I'm at your mercy, man.
That's good. That's good. So let me look at my remaining questions here. Yeah, there's a good question. What's something that you like about the way church is done in 2024 that's an improvement from when you got into ministry? So it's easy to dump on where we are today compared to the old days. But I'm curious, is there something that you see today that you like in broader church world that's an improvement compared to when you got in?
I think the music's a little improved.
Yeah, you think so?
No, I don't mean to be that.
Ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, Brother Jim here is more of a fan of contemporary than you probably think he is. So.
Yeah. My I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings, but my favorite thing is when somebody walks up with a quartet CD and says, "Here, this will bless your soul, Pastor Jim," and it never did.
If it's not, that's such a specific style. It's kind of like barbershop,
Yeah.
Like if you love it, great, but that's such a niche. I mean, it's so specific.
I know.
And Southern Baptist, we just, we got into that niche, the Southern gospel thing, and I have my moments when I like to turn on, I bowed on my knees and cried holy, and I can get a good tear out of it, but most of the time, that's not what I'm listening to in the car.
I went through a stage, I call it my super spiritual stage, where I really, really, really tried to listen to Southern gospel back before I was still in the Army. And there is one video, the first time it snowed in Germany that Myra was there, we took a video camera and we were on our way to church that morning on a Sunday morning, and we were videoing. And in the background, you can hear the cathedrals singing, and it makes me cringe every time I watch that video. I'm like, I was such a dweeb, man. And I don't mean that about anybody else, but that wasn't me. That's the thing. It's not me. It's not the music is bad. It's not me.
And you know what? You don't have to pretend.
Well, I know. I just don't want to hurt anybody's feelings because I have lots and lots of friends that I love that love Southern gospel. It's just not me. I'm a rock and roll guy. I like screaming guitars, and that's just if you could take a secular song and say that it moves me, it would be I told you this already this morning, Dwayne Allman's slide guitar in Melissa. I could hear him play that fill on top all day long, and it causes me to worship. Now, not that song, obviously, but the music, it draws me. God's given us that music, and I love to worship.
Do you ever listen to a guy named Derek Trucks?
Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
That's the slide guitar today I like to listen to.
Hey, there's a guy named Kingfish out of Clarksdale.
Yes, absolutely,
that is incredible.
Oh yeah. You got to know that.
I'm a blues dude. I mean, that's really what I like, blues music, and not the vulgar stuff or anything like that. But I mean, I just love the music tones of blues.
I mean, Stevie Ray Vaughan is a classic. You got to go there. But the today guy I listen to is Joe Bonamassa.
Yeah. Well, so I like Joe Bonamassa and Jeff Beck before he died.
Yeah.
But what I really like is I like Beth Hart singing with him.
Oh yeah.
Beth Hart is
she puts the stank on it, man.
Yeah. Yes, she does.
Yeah. With that grasp. Kind of a throaty sound. It's good.
By the way, she is in no sense a Christian singer.
No.
So if anybody's listening to this and you hear me say that, but I will tell you this, there's a song that says, "Take It Easy on Me," that she does. You ought to go listen to it because it sounds like she's asking the Lord to take it easy on her. Like, the whole gist of it is, she's going through trials and she even says, "I trust you, but take it easy on me."
Yeah.
And I thought, man, I don't know if that's what she's singing or not, but that's the way I read it. And
I'll take it that way.
I sing. I mean, I'm thinking, Lord, please take it easy on me.
Yeah. So let's do the flip reverse of that question. Is what are some things about 2024, the way church is done today, that you look back and say, I think we've lost something from whatever you think, whatever golden era you harken back to, 80s or whatever.
Yeah. So I think there's two things. That, and these will be the downfall of the church. If we don't fix these two, we're gonna destroy ourselves. The first is this total rejection of purity. Now, I know they use purity culture as a negative thing now and the purity rings and all that stuff, but the Bible tells us to be pure. The Bible calls us to holiness. Mm-hmm. The Bible's the one that says if you're going to be my people, you need to walk with me. And holiness and purity is part of that. You can't engage in lust or sex or whatever your passion is unbridled without the controlling element of the Spirit and what the Word says to boundary those things. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's one of them. I think
a church that's gotten into too much liberty.
Yeah, too much liberty, too much license, and I think we are running fast down that road. I know the culture is, but I see the big Eva culture that's doing that. I mean, it is almost every week that I see some new big church pastor getting caught in an affair.
Yeah,
and that's just wrong.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't care how you. It's just wrong. Mm-hmm. And so I think, and eventually, what that's going to do is it's going to bleed into the congregations, and they're going to do it, or maybe it already has. But I mean, we are losing the idea of holiness in the church, and so that's one of them. The second one is the idea that church membership and church attendance don't matter. Right. Where parents, without blinking an eye, will allow their kids to play baseball or soccer or basketball 3 times out of 4 in a month on a Sunday morning and keep them. What do you expect? I mean, they're not going to be a professional.
Of course.
They're not going to be a professional.
Unless you're a standout now and a physical freak of nature.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, has anybody ever stood up next to LeBron James and seen what... I mean,
I don't think they have.
Not only is he tall, but that dude has bowling balls on his shoulders. You know? I mean, he is huge.
You don't understand what it's like.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember playing against guys in high school when I played football just as a normal starter, not anyone that got an offer from anybody, but just a starter in high school. And when I would play against guys on other teams I knew was being recruited.
You knew why.
Oh, man. These guys are going to the Gators next year.
Right, that's
and
right.
You play them and you're like, the gap between us is so significant.
Yeah.
Like
physically, not even technically, just physically.
They're just monsters. I mean, they're huge.
My associate pastor was a standout linebacker in high school. I mean, he went to the Nike thing that they do for high school athletes. He got recruited to I don't know what level of school this is, but it's a small one in North Carolina. And he had all the tenacity that you'd want in a linebacker, all the speed you'd want in a linebacker, all the everything, except he was 5'10".
Right. Yeah.
And
sorry.
Yeah. I mean, you can hardly be a cornerback at 5'10" anymore.
5'10", you can be a running back, and that's
maybe,
about it.
Maybe.
That's about it.
Yeah. And so parents have deluded themselves, and they're choosing the wrong thing. What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul?
Yep.
And yet they are leading their children straight to destruction. And then they wonder why when they're 18 or 19, they don't come back to church anymore.
Yeah, shock.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so that I do think that it went overboard in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, where we were in church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, Tuesday night for visitation, and a special Saturday prayer breakfast or something.
The church was every moment of your life.
I think that was too much. But like you said, the pendulum, I think we went back the wrong way. And now we're lucky if, people, I tried to tell folks this at Kirby years ago, but they didn't really grasp it, I don't think. But if you have 1,000 people when everybody shows up 4 times a month and they only show up 3 times a month, you now have 750 people.
Right.
And if you have 1,000 people and they only show up once a month, you now have 250 people.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just math, man. Mm-hmm. I didn't invent it like Al Gore or whatever, but it's just math. It works.
Yeah.
And so we have got to understand priorities that will lead our children into discipleship where they want to walk with Jesus for the rest of their lives, and where they want to train their children to walk with Jesus the rest of their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So last question before we get into food. What do you make of, so we're about to go into like election time. And so this is a hard time to lead for pastors during this time. How do you, well, there's a lot of ways I could go with this question. It seems like right now the church is trying to figure out what way to go. And I was thinking about doing my own episode on this topic, but I'll just throw it in here since I got you here. There's been a long marriage between evangelicals and Republicans. Sure. And that seems like at some point, we're going to go our separate ways. I'm just guessing here. I don't know. But we saw a couple of days ago come out on abortion with a really unsatisfactory take.
Anemic.
Yeah. And then even beyond that, I mean, there's way other things beyond that people had the same issues in 2016 and 2020. But how do you go forward? How do you talk about politics as a pastor, especially when in the past it's been pretty easy to just say like, well, we vote red because the other option is awful. Yeah. But at what point do we start saying the other option isn't that much better?
Yeah. So I think the problem with all of that is that we ever did get in bed with somebody. Right. So the foolish man trusts in man. Right. And so at some point, now not everybody who voted Republican their whole life or whatever put their trust in men. I don't mean that.
No, I mean, but there's a real, the lesser of two evils is not foolish completely. Like you have to at some point say, I have two options before me and I can either push the red button or the blue button.
So here's what I think. I really think that we have gotten too much hope in politics to the point that it's closed everything out. When I was a kid, an anecdote. When I was a kid, my mom and dad would vote. They both voted differently because of the different heritages that they had. And that'll change, by the way, after Jimmy Carter. They've never voted differently again.
But that just shows, too, in the past, the differences between the parties were not that vast.
That's right. But in those days, they would walk into the voting booth, and it had a curtain. And they closed the curtain, and they cast their ballot, and they walked back out, and sometimes they didn't even tell each other who they voted for.
Right.
Because at some point you voted your conscience, you did what was right, and it was nobody else's business.
And now you have to take public stands.
Yeah. And so now you have to take public stands for it. And so here's the best way that I know how to lead and I thought long and hard. In fact, I taught this at my church just a few weeks ago. The best way to do it is for us to vote our conscience as Christians quietly. Mm-hmm. And as the church or as Christ followers to speak against power all the time, no matter who it is. What we've gotten to the point in saying, we're like, well, we don't want to steal votes from Trump, so we're not going to say anything bad. Look, the guy is not a good man.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, the guy, you can say whatever you want, but he is not a good man. And what immediately folks who, even Christians who want, they're like, yeah, but look at the alternative. I don't care the alternative. John the Baptist didn't go up to Herod and say, I don't like your policies on this, and this. He says, you've taken your brother's wife and you shouldn't have done it. Mm-hmm. So I believe that we have, as the church, in the name of expediency, sacrificed our stand on the truth by getting in bed with people who we ought to be talking against, who we ought to be calling out and saying, you need to do better. It appalls me to see all the Christian leaders around Donald Trump, and none of them are publicly calling him out on any of his stuff. Now, I'm not anti-Trump. I'm just saying that I've heard Christians talk about Trump like he's the only savior for America.
Yeah. No, what you're pointing out, I've noticed, is that you can tell by selective silence who's for who.
Yeah.
Like even the guys at Christianity Today. So you probably know the trio of like Russell Moore, David French, those kind of guys, the soft, squishy middle boys. They try to straddle the fence on everything. But practically, all they ever do is compliment the left and take shots at the right.
Right.
And they're supposed to, so they have no prophetic voice. They think they do, but they don't ever, like the mountain of sin by the Democrats, they don't ever address that. But what we don't want to do is the same thing on the other side.
That's right.
Where it's like, we all know we lean right. Like, let's not be foolish. We all know we lean to the right. But at the same time, if we never, ever, ever speak, we have lost the prophetic voice.
That's right. Well, the Bible is pretty clear. So I don't want to get you in trouble or anything like that. I don't want to get me in trouble when I go back to North Carolina. But it's one thing for me to vote for a candidate that will close our southern border and will make some sense of what it means to be an American.
Sure.
Okay, that's one thing. But on the other hand, the Bible tells me to love and care for the foreigner. I mean, like, it's one of the top things that is repeated throughout all of Scripture. And so I have to find the place where I can say we're going to lose our nation if we don't close the border, but at the same time not be negative or bombastic or angry towards those who are image bearers of God who are in our country.
Right.
Whether they're here legally or not, that's not my job. My job as a pastor is to love them and to lead our people to love them and to take care of them and hopefully win them to Christ.
Yeah, once they're here, why not treat them like we would if we saw them on the mission field?
That's right, absolutely. And so I think that goes for all of the different things. Like I am vehemently anti-abortion, but I believe that if a woman or a doctor that's involved in that, or a husband or a father that's complicit with that sin, just like I told you earlier, I have a sin of pride, just like you would treat me or treat you for whatever your pet sin is or whatever. We need to extend the gospel and call them out of it, but not in a condemning way, because they will never come to Christ if we just kill them.
Sure.
So if the government needs to do that, that's one thing. But as a Christ follower, and that's the other, I guess that's the whole perspective that I have is I'm not the government. Our government's not going to heaven. Our America is going to fall. Every nation, if it doesn't fall here, it'll fall when Jesus comes, when he rules the nations with a rod of iron. The whole Bible tells. Nebuchadnezzar's vision is that all of the nations on the earth will give way to the kingdom of God. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, the kingdom of God is where I have to stand and hold loosely my allegiance with America. But I ought to be able to call America out for her sins regularly, just like I ought to be able to call Israel out for her sins, and not be deemed an anti-Semite, because I'm not an anti-Semite, but there are things that they need to do better.
Either there's a God in heaven or there's not.
Yeah, that's right. Jesus is Lord or he's not.
And everybody, even the government itself is under his authority.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no government that can rightly say we stand above God.
Yeah, ours is trying to.
Come on.
But yeah.
So I think that immigration thing is a really good test case, because it's one of those things that has biblical points on both sides. Yeah. And not that I know everything, but it seems like the way to go about it would say, what if we propose something that created expedited legal pathways to immigration and close the border.
Yeah.
That way it's just like we still love refugees. We can still bring them here, but we got to know who's coming in.
Yeah.
The whole thing about let's just let anybody walk across and don't know.
Yeah. You just don't have a nation.
That's going to kill us.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They found some guy from a Colombian drug cartel in San Antonio last week, and he's the highest mafia member. And it's this dude just walked across.
Yeah.
So with all of those things, here's another thing. I'll say one thing that I think I've changed on in the last 10 years is that somehow I learned, I don't know where I learned it, or maybe just through osmosis in the culture, that pastors shouldn't address political issues.
Right.
And I've changed on that. I feel like if we're supposed to be equipping people, then shouldn't we equip them for everything in their life?
Right.
Doesn't the Bible speak to every issue and to be able to walk people through? So I really don't do the whole pastors should never address politics or positions or take stands on things. I think that's leaving your people out to dry. And then they kind of go out and just, what are they making decisions based on?
Right.
They don't, if you haven't equipped them, if it's profitable for them, tell them, help them walk through it. So that's one thing I've probably changed on in the last 10 years is, and I feel like the COVID years forced the hand of we were unprepared for that.
Yeah, that's right.
At least I was. I felt unprepared to lead through that.
Yeah, we all were. I mean, nobody can. I mean, something else could happen, and with COVID in a close rearview mirror, and we still wouldn't be prepared. There are things we just aren't prepared for.
And the concept of political theology, I don't remember ever studying that. Mm-mm. That's something that's...
Well, because for a long time it was just assumed. Like you started this segment with, it's just assumed that we were leaning right and everything, and that you could trust the people on the right.
Right.
But those days are gone. We've got, I don't want to, I'm not trumpeting the Washington Post's talking points, but there are some people who scare me on the right, that with what they say and the way we have gone from a nation that did not like strong centralized leadership, regardless of which side of the aisle you were on,
right,
to now both sides are calling out, presidents ought to use every power they have, and the Congress is sitting around picking their nose, not doing anything.
Right.
And we're going to lose our republic if we're not careful.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, the things, we can't just go off of what we used to say, because things have dramatically changed.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's end with some fun, shall we?
Yeah, man.
Some food
I love
discussions.
Food.
Here's a question for you.
North Carolina is not the place for barbecue. Is that what you're going to ask?
So do you still stand with Memphis as the champ?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely, man.
There's some spots that I do like out that way so
the sauces. I am not a big fan of the strong, thick hickory sauces that are like here.
Yeah.
I would much rather have the peppery vinegar based ones from North Carolina.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the meat itself.
Yeah.
Over there, they chop it and it's all mushy and soggy. Mm-hmm. And over here, and they don't put any rub on it over there. So I love good rub and all that stuff. So yeah.
Well, let's go there. Memphis barbecue. What is your top? What do you stand by?
Yeah, so it depends on what I'm going to eat. If I go to
how about a pork sandwich?
a pork sandwich, Central.
Okay, I'm with you there.
Yeah.
I like the pork. Well, all right, how about a rack of ribs?
Probably Rendezvous, but Rendezvous. I do like the seasoning at is it One and Only? Yeah, I love the seasoning that they put on it over there. Although it's oven.
I've tried to tell people the smoked chicken drumsticks over there are fire.
Yeah.
You must go try it. I never lead you astray. All right, anything like a wild card? Another thing you like to go for?
My favorite place for either tamales or for barbecue nachos is commissary.
Yeah.
I like their boss hog salad too. If I'm in the mood for a salad with all that meat on it, I like that too.
Chicken wings. Are you a chicken wing guy?
I am, but I didn't get into it over here much. I think the chicken wings at is it called Boss?
Boss's is gone, my man.
Oh, what?
Yeah, I know.
Is it gone because of COVID?
When did they shut down, Isaac? Around COVID?
Man,
yeah.
So I liked theirs.
The honey gold, right? That's what I used to get there all the time.
I get their hot stuff, man. I love.
You're one of those guys.
I love. Yeah. I like to feel it again later. You know what I mean? It's just I love
a little sweat.
Yeah. But this is where I'll go in North Carolina. There's a place in North Carolina that man, I can't even think. Oh, it's called the Smoke Pit, and the Smoke Pit in North Carolina has large chicken wing drumsticks, and they are awesome.
Well, Central has started doing the whole wing here, and then Huey's does the whole wing.
Oh yeah,
and they're all pretty good. So burger spot. What's your Memphis burger spot?
I'm going to show that I'm a sellout. All right, I hate to be a sellout.
Here it is.
Five Guys.
Are you serious?
Yeah, man. I love a Five Guys with the bacon and with the A1 sauce and all that stuff.
That is a good burger.
And I'm not a fan. I would always rather go to a local place than a chain, but Five Guys just hit me right. And yeah.
Hey, am I crazy? I have this repressed memory in the old days of Five Guys, you threw the peanuts on the floor.
Yeah.
Did that happen?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When did that stop?
I don't know. I guess COVID ruined everything. And it was our government's fault.
As a kid,
COVID was an inside job.
As a kid, I have all these memories of like multiple restaurants where I stepped on peanuts.
Yeah.
And now
Texas Roadhouse.
And didn't Logan's do it?
Yeah, Logan's did it.
What happened to that? Was that a trend?
I guess so.
Were there peanut allergies?
Probably.
What? Anyway, I don't know what happened.
Helicopter parents and peanut allergies,
Somehow the more we care about allergies, the more allergies there are.
I know.
Up with that.
Yeah. In fact, we were talking today, Myra just read something that Neutrogena, well, I better not call that out. She was just reading that
a product
that you put on your face has hidden cancer-causing things.
Of course.
And so Myra and I were talking, and we were like, I don't, as a kid, when nobody wore sunscreen, I don't remember us having skin cancer.
Yeah.
Like, I think the skin cancer, hey, put more of this on and you won't get it. And they're like, that's where it's coming from.
I know.
Wait, pass me my tinfoil hat.
It's everything now. Now it's the tap water has liquid birth control in it.
I know, because
all the women, when they go number one,
I know.
They can't filter it out of the water
I've heard
supply.
All that.
And the microplastics are
chemtrails.
Come on, man.
The Koopa
So we better get back to food. So all right, if you're in the mood for, and I asked this because I just had it recently, but I want to see if you in the mood for Italian in the area. Are you an Italian guy?
Oh yeah. So Myra and I love Italian.
We can include pizza in here, but if you had a pizza,
okay. So if I were going to go with pizza, I love Rock and Dough.
I do too.
Yeah, a Rock and Dough. That multiple pepperoni pizza they've got with like three different. Man, that thing is the bomb.
Do you remember Trolley Stop before they closed?
I don't.
Down on Madison.
No.
Isaac, do you remember Trolley Stop? I do. It was. I think I've heard that Rock and Dough was started out of the people that left Trolley Stop.
I do. I had heard that Rock and Dough was initially a food truck. And then they opened the one, I think, in Germantown first.
Yeah, it's good.
And then they bounced over up to near the seminary.
Now, it's not like your traditional New York style pizza.
No,
but it's good.
Hey, so Myra went to Italy twice, and so I have to be really careful what I say about Italian food because she is a snob.
Oh yeah,
I mean, she's a. You know, have you seen that commercial where the lady says it's croissant? That's Myra. She's like,
look, my wife grew up in upstate New York.
Yeah,
she's an Italian snob too.
Yeah, that's right.
We can't even talk about it because when I say like, let's go get, I'm one of those guys that I actually like chain food once in a while.
Right.
I'll get in the mood for Domino's or Papa John's.
Oh, Papa John's! I love Papa John's.
She
man.
will never.
Yeah, Myra doesn't like Papa John's either.
See,
she's like, man, the sauce is weird, and I'm like, yeah, but it's got cheese in the crust.
I know, but like, don't you just want like I'd want a Big Mac once in a while?
Yeah.
I want what that taste.
Well,
so,
yeah, that's right.
So we don't agree on that.
There was a place, I don't know if it's still open in Collierville, that was called Chow Baby, and
I've seen it.
And so Chow Baby was a good place to eat. Myra wouldn't complain about that pizza, and they had cannoli that was to die for. So
they just across the street from us, they opened up. It might be where the old Roosters used to be because Roosters.
That's where I used to get my hair cut.
I know it's gone.
Her name was Lenore. She came to our church for a long time. She used to cut my hair all the time.
I remember that. They put in Little Italy over there, and that is a New York style pizza. It's pretty good. I like it. It's pretty good. All right, so Italian, not pizza. Where are you going?
I don't know. I like the Macaroni Grill, being a chain that burned down right down the road a little bit ago.
Yeah. Can I tell you the best one I've ever had?
Well, hold on. Have you been to Pete and Sam's?
I've never been. So Mike Kraft just told me I needed to go to Pete and Sam's.
So Pete and Sam's was good if you like the old shady, you think somebody's doing deals in the back corner kind of place.
And I do.
Yeah, and so that's that. I love that. But usually when we like to go to one-offs, mom and pop places, and so anyway, I don't know. Go ahead.
I just had the best manicotti I've ever had at Ronnie Grisanti's.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the Grisanti's.
It blew my mind.
So Ronnie used to be down in the antique mall in Collierville, and then he moved up here, which is weird because he's like right next to Frank.
Yes,
yeah,
in the hotel.
Right, that's right. And I like Frank. I like that Grisanti's too. Yeah, I mean I like them both. Yeah,
I've got to go pit one against the other, but man, I'm telling you,
you could do lunch, sleep it off in the hotel, and then go do supper and see.
That's right. All right, how about like an ethnic food that's like in the realm of like Thai, Indian, Chinese, something off the beaten path in that kind of.
So here, I like sekasui. Here,
the Japanese place down there.
Yeah, is that a Japanese?
I thought so.
Maybe that's not the. I don't know, man. I don't know. I can't. It's been a long time since I've been eating here like that.
A lot of the guys used to go to Red Koi and get that sushi.
So Red Koi, I like Red Koi for sushi. I used to go there, and then there's a place. I don't think it's White Station. I think it's Yates. When you turn back to the left, right across the interstate here, Mosa. Yeah. So I like Mosa.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mosa at White Station, and so I like that. I like noodles in Germantown. There's that one that's up in Bartlett as well. I like that. They've got they call it Vietnamese noodle soup. It's pho.
Yeah,
but I like it. I've been to Vietnam, and so
Vietnamase noodle soup.
Yeah, that's right. I guess they don't want people trying to.
That's right.
Pho. I'd like some pho, please. But anyway, so I like noodles. In fact, here's a blast from the past. When Tim Sheehy and I used to go out to lunch together all the time, we would go to Noodles in in Germantown and eat. So, yeah.
Because to reminisce on the Vietnam times.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So all right, I'll do one more category: steakhouse. If you're getting a steak?
Fleming's is hard to beat.
Fleming's is underrated.
Yeah, I like Fleming's. People used to give us gift cards when we were here. It's right. It connects us. It used to be where I took, high potentates who'd come in to preach to us.
Sure.
I used to take them over there, and I really like it. And it was a special occasion for Myra and me. We wouldn't go a lot, but for our anniversary, we might go.
You ever go to Ruth's right across the street?
Yeah, of course, Ruth's Chris. Yeah, but I thought that would be too much of a throwaway. Everybody likes Ruth's Chris. I like Capitol Grill's okay.
I have not done that yet.
Yeah.
Now, the new one in town, I don't know if it was here when you were here, Porch and Parlor. Everyone's talking about that.
No, I haven't heard it.
Is that the one? Yeah, Porch and Parlor.
Is it? That's not the one. That's not the one in Bartlett, is it?
No, that's Side Porch.
Side Porch. Okay, yeah. That's who bought that? That was the
Jeff Jones.
Yeah, Jeff Jones. That's right. I knew he was connected somehow. Yeah.
But no, everyone talks about that one.
No, I hadn't heard
Porch
it.
and Parlor, and then what's the other one that I went to that I thought? Oh, Folks Folly.
Oh yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah. That one's really good. A little bit too rich for my blood. But yeah, that's an old Memphis establishment,
Right.
and so absolutely. And I like. I don't know if it's still around, but there was a place called Jim's Place. Yeah, is it
I've
still?
heard of that. I haven't been there.
It's not my place, but I mean, it's like some guy named Jim, and they let me in sometimes.
Yeah.
But if I pay, but that's the I liked it. Houston's up here is not a bad place for all around stuff.
Yeah, and it's not crazy expensive.
No,
not
no,
like
no.
the other ones.
Yeah.
Buckley's is a steakhouse too. It's kind of underrated.
Yeah, I've only been there once at night, and it's been a long, long time.
Yeah. They have a good vibe in there. If you like that old vibe,
Right.
which I do, I kind of like to go. I want to go in and hear some opera music played in the background, like the mafia thing.
Yeah,
that you're talking about.
Well, I would prefer Sinatra, but yeah, same thing. I like to hear Sinatra, which is mafia thing too. You know.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. If you could pick up one restaurant, the entire restaurant from Memphis, put it on a flatbed and take it back to North Carolina, and it would be there for you at any time you want, what would it be?
Oh,
you get to take the whole restaurant with you.
Man.
And you can have it at North Carolina anytime you need it. You just walk across the street, drop it across the street from the church. It's there for you anytime you want.
Man, that's so hard. The one that's just floating. This can't. I'll tell you. I do know. Okay, the commissary.
You would take
Germantown commissary.
Okay.
Yeah, deviled eggs, the tamales. Their sandwich is passable, better than anything North Carolina's got.
Yeah.
So the commissary.
So you got a full range. It's a pretty broad menu.
I think I could live off that.
Okay, good, very good. So, well, that's all my questions. Anything you want to say? Any last?
No, man,
last
I appreciate it. Let me just say for your group that it was really a blessing to be here with you in October.
Yeah,
that was that broke some tension in my heart, in my soul, and it was a good night. So I'm grateful for it, and I'm really proud of you for two reasons. One, I'm grateful you're being selected to pastor this church is a little bit of a reprieve for my mind. It means that everything that I did wasn't rejected. Now, I know that's not true, but you start to believe lies sometimes in your head and stuff. And so that's one of them. But then you are so much more creative than I am. I'm a hammer and nail guy, and if it's not a nail, I'll still hammer it, right? But you have brought a real sense that the podcast is one of them. The way that you preach in series is good. I'm proud of your book that's just coming out, and so I believe that Kirby's in really good hands. And I am grateful for your leadership here, and whatever I can do, I'm here for you.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. And I told the search committee when they were bringing me to that effect, when we were in conversations, I said, I just want you guys to know, I don't know how you view the past. I'm a fan of Jim Collier. I liked him, and we're still friends. So if you bring me, it's a little bit of that, and and everyone was just like, "No, we love Jim." So
that's good. That test is behind us.
Yeah, because it in some ways not 100%, but a certain hearkening back to some of those times was what I was going to do and have done. So I wanted them to know that
right. So they're not surprised.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I'm different than the guy that came after Jim.
Right,
but I'm not that different from Jim. A little bit, personality wise, maybe. I don't have the military thing.
And generationally, we just bring that baggage from the generation difference.
Yeah. I'm a millennial, but at the same time, there's a lot of the way we think is similar in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're a Gen X military guy.
Yeah, that's right.
Classic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So awesome, man. Well, thank you very much for doing it.
You said you were going to ask me who my favorite intern was.
I'm afraid of the answer, though.
Well, no, I'm just going to tell you that I was sorely disappointed in Ed Reed when he shipped off my three best interns, or two interns and my youth pastor to Colorado.
That's right. Don't give Austin that credit.
Yeah, well, Austin's in South Carolina though now. I've got to keep him on my good side.
True.
And so we shipped all you guys off, and so I immediately I felt. And so if we talk about about who impacted my ministry the most, I would say you're my favorite intern.
Hey.
Because you were so influential in my son's life. But I brought this up to my family, and I have to say Tommy was my favorite.
Of course.
Because Tommy was most influential in my daughter's life, right? Because they're married now.
That's fair.
And so so I'm stuck in all of that between the two. But I did say that I would bring this up. So now tell me, my question for you is, who is Abby's favorite preacher?
Oh,
No, you don't have to answer that. That's good.
She she goes back over and over to how influential when she came to Kirby Woods and she heard it was a combo of she really likes your preaching, but she had not been exposed to expository
that's right.
preaching in that way that was just direct expository walking through the text. And so she always goes back and forth. It reminds me how much she likes Jim Collier's preaching. I'm like, hey, can you say it a little less? Like, I appreciate the truth, but so I'm like, I'm your favorite preacher, right? So yeah,
well,
she is a huge Jim Collier fan.
That's good.
She remembers that time so vividly, and she grew so fast.
Yeah, praise the Lord.
That affected our vision of like what Kirby is, the place you can come and grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was a part of it.
That's the green K with the leaves on it.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. A place you can come. If you plant here, if you plant down,
yeah.
and invest, you will grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're going to get exposed to the good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's great.
Well, thank you guys for listening to this special podcast with Jim Collier, who is a friend, a former pastor of Kirby, and has been influential in my life and has kind of walked with me through the last couple of seasons of ministry for me. So thank you, brother, for being here. Good to see you. You guys go to a Bible preaching, gospel teaching church if you don't have one. And if you're in the Memphis area, I can tell you it's here, Kirby Woods Baptist Church, 6325 Poplar Ave. We'll see you guys soon. Bye.